Hello, Patriots. Welcome to Doug's Democracy Den. In the Den, we discuss American government, American politics, and current events. We begin by honoring the flag and the country by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Feel free to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now notice the pledge we just took. Notice the word republic. You swore to a republic. That's because this country is a republic. People talk about democracy, which is true, but there are different types of democracy. There are direct democracies and indirect democracies. And the United States is an indirect democracy, also known as a republic. What does that mean? If you were living in a direct democracy, in the city where you live, every 2 weeks you'd all have to show up and vote on everything. That's not how we do it. In our republic, every couple of years we elect representatives to something called the city council. Then the city council people are the ones who meet every 2 weeks and vote on everything. And they're supposed to be responsive to you. They're your representatives. In a republic, we have representatives. We don't direct vote on every issue. If you ever looked at the city council agenda and see all the stuff they're voting on, much of it isn't something you're even interested in. But they do that for you, your elected representatives. That's how this country works. So, let's go to something called the Electoral College. The Electoral College becomes talked about every 4 years in this country when there's a presidential election. And much of the commentary is by people who know little or nothing about it but think they do. The Electoral College has been around since the country began. Contrary to popular belief, it was not created in 2000 by George Bush to cheat Al Gore out of an election. It was created in 1788 by the Founding Fathers. Why did they do that? We have to look at one of the troubles they had in building the Constitution. When they were creating the Constitution, and there were 13 original states, they had the same problem we do now. There are some states with real teeny tiny populations, and some states with big populations. Delaware versus New York. Huge disparity in population. And the question that the founders immediately faced was, how do you equitably represent both small population and large population states in a legislative body? How do you do that? That became known as the large state, small state controversy. And it is the basis of our Congress, and it's the basis of why we have an electoral college. Because what the founders figured out was, when you got such varying sizes of states, it's very hard to be totally equal to them all. But you can be equitable to them all. What did they do? They created the House of Representatives, where in the House of Representatives, all the representation for each state is based on the population of that state. That means a state like New York gets way more representatives than Delaware does. Delaware has 1. But then they also created the Senate. And in the Senate, they gave every state 2. So New York has 2 senators, but Delaware also has 2 senators, which makes them feel more equal. It's not totally equal across the board, but it's equitable. Large states are favored in the House, small states are favored in the Senate. And put that together, and it's a balanced thing. And putting that together is what leads to the Electoral College. Because how do you figure out how many Electoral College votes your state has? Very simple. I practically just told you. Look at how many U.S. representatives your state has, and add to them how many senators your state has. The combined number of elected representatives that your state has in Congress is your number of Electoral College votes. Now, let's think about how the Electoral College plays out. People are under the misidea that a presidential election is one national election. It is not. A presidential election is 50 state elections plus the District of Columbia. And that becomes an interesting caveat. District of Columbia is obviously not a state, but for purposes of the presidential election, it is treated as a state because they can vote in the presidential election, but they have no representation in Congress. So for purposes of presidential elections, D.C. is treated as a small state. They're treated like Delaware. Delaware has one representative and two senators, which means they have 3 electoral college votes. The District of Columbia is given 3 electoral college votes to mimic a small state. So, when the presidential election comes around, how many electoral college votes your state has is dependent on how many representatives you have in House plus Senate. The other thing about this is that you take and add them all up, and what's the number? There are 435 members in the House of Representatives. That represents the representatives of all 50 states. There are 100 senators. You add 435 to 100 and you get 535. That's the total number of reps and senators in Congress, 535. But that is not the total number of votes in the Electoral College. Why? Because of the 3 for D.C. We always have to add 3 for D.C. That gives you 538. There are 538 total electoral votes in the Electoral College. Simple math tells us that you need at least half to win an election, but half of 538 is 269. So you need at least one more to win an election. You need 270. That's where the number 270 comes from. There are a total of 538 votes in the Electoral College. You need to divide it in 2 and add 1, and you get 270. 270 is needed to become president. Here's the trivia question for you. How many Electoral College votes did President Trump receive in the 2016 election? Now let's continue. As you're watching election night, they will start, the networks will come on at 8 o'clock, and they have exit polls from states where they start making projections about who's going to win which state. And that starts at 8 o'clock and goes through the night. And they'll show you the tote board for popular vote, and they'll show you the tote board for electoral college vote. That popular vote tote board doesn't even need to be there. It's irrelevant. We don't decide presidential elections on popular vote. We decide presidential elections on electoral vote. Think about a baseball game. Baseball keeps track of runs and hits, but what is the game decided on? Runs. Doesn't matter how many hits you have or if you had more than the other team. How many runs did you score? Same thing. Popular vote doesn't matter. Electoral college vote matters. And people know that, but they keep making that same silly argument all the time. Now back to the trivia question. You were all here for the 2016 election. How many electoral college votes did Donald Trump receive? That wasn't the question. The question was how many did he earn? In the final tallying, President Donald Trump actually won 30 states versus the other person who only won 20. So that's quite a discrepancy. Donald Trump earned 306 electoral college votes. But what was he officially declared the winner with? He was officially declared the winner with 304. What's the discrepancy? 2 voters voted for somebody else. And there's another element of the system that some people don't like. It's called the faithless elector. There were 2 electoral college voters from some states whose state had pledged them to Donald Trump, but they decided to vote for somebody else. That happens from time to time. The question about that is a faithless elector ever decided an election? And the answer is no. They haven't even come close. So although Donald Trump earned 306 electoral votes in 2016, he was only credited with 304 because 2 of them voted for somebody else. And it wasn't the other, there were several random votes given out. Some voted for Colin Powell, some voted for Jill Green, some voted for Wilma Mankiller, an Indian chief. It was just random stuff. It wasn't like they all plotted to go to the other major opponent. So this has been a brief look at the Electoral College. It's been there since 1788 when the country began. It is what decides the presidential election. See you next time.